I, 28 am sitting in a high-end tailor shop, getting the final fit on a charcoal suit that costs more than my first car, while my phone blows up with texts from the man who ruined my life exactly 6 months ago. He, 29 was my fiancé of 4 years. We had the venue booked, the catering deposits paid, and the invites sent. Then on a random Tuesday he sat me down and said he didn't vibrate at the same frequency as me anymore. He needed to find himself in Europe. He left me with the bill for the cancellations and a broken heart that I had to scrub off the floor, while he was posting Instagram stories of sunsets in Santorini. The first 3 months were a blur of legal threats from vendors and me working double shifts to cover the $15,000 in non-refundable deposits he walked away from. He didn't just leave. He ghosted the financial responsibility. My father had to step in to help me keep my apartment. The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was a calculated financial abandonment. But then the script flipped in a way I never saw coming. About 4 months into this nightmare, I had to meet with the owner of the vineyard we'd originally booked to see if I could claw back even a fraction of the deposit. The owner's son, 31 was the one who took the meeting. He was professional, incredibly kind, and clearly saw I was a wreck. What started as a business meeting turned into coffee, then dinner, then a whirlwind realization that I had spent 4 years with a man who treated me like a safety net, while this new man treated me like a priority. Fast forward to last week. I'm officially engaged to the vineyard owner's son. Sounds fast, but when you know, especially after you've seen the worst in someone. We are planning a massive gala-style wedding at his family's estate. And that's when my ex decided he was done finding himself. He showed up at my front door 3 days ago, looking tan, thin, and absolutely desperate. He didn't even say hello. He just started crying about how the world is cold, and how he realized I was his true north. He actually tried to walk past me into the apartment like he still lived there. "I'm back," he whispered, reaching for my hand. "We can still do the October date. I talked to my mother. She'll help us rebook everything." I just stared at him. "The October date is still happening," I said, my voice dead level. "But you aren't the one standing at the altar. You need to leave." He didn't take it well. He started screaming that I couldn't replace him that quickly, and that he has rights to the relationship. He actually called my mother and told her I was having a manic episode and needed to be stopped from making a mistake. The entitlement was staggering. He genuinely believed that he could press pause on my life, and I'd just stay frozen in time until he decided to hit play again. When he found out through mutual friends that I wasn't just dating, but was actually engaged to the man who now owns the venue he walked away from, he lost his mind. He started sending me screenshots of our old texts, claiming he was going to sue me for emotional distress, and demanding I pay him back for the engagement ring he let me keep, which I had already sold to pay off the caterer he stiffed. Yesterday he took it a step further. He showed up at my fiancé's place of business. He tried to tell my fiancé that I was unstable, and that the only reason I was with him was to get revenge. He even tried to claim that we were never officially broken up, just on a sabbatical, and that my new engagement was technically infidelity in the eyes of the law. My fiancé, being the absolute class act he is, had security escort him off the property, but not before my ex shouted that he was going to show up at the wedding and reclaim what's mine. He thinks he's the protagonist in a rom-com where the guy wins the lead back at the last second. He has no idea that I've spent the last month working with a lawyer to ensure that the $15,000 he cost me comes back with interest. In my state, if you break off an engagement, the person who was ready and willing to marry can often sue for breach of promise regarding specific financial expenditures. My lawyer already served his mother, who is his only source of income, with the papers. The best part? He still thinks he has an invitation. He thinks if he shows up in a suit, I'll realize my mistake. He's currently blowing up my phone saying he's forgiven me for the rebound and is ready to move forward. He has no clue that I've hired off-duty police officers for the ceremony, and the moment he steps foot on that private estate, he's getting a one-way ticket to a trespassing charge. He wanted to find himself. Well, he's about to find out exactly what happens when you treat a person like an option and they realize they're a luxury. If you want to see how the reclamation goes when he meets a pair of handcuffs at the ceremony, make sure to follow along for the next update. I promise the wedding photos will be poetic. The day after my ex showed up at my door, the entitlement tour went into overdrive. He didn't just stop at calling my mother. He started a group chat with my entire bridal party, most of whom had blocked him months ago, claiming that I was being coerced by a predatory businessman. He actually had the nerve to say that because we hadn't officially signed a legal document dissolving our domestic partnership, which we never even had, I was legally tethered to him. I was at my desk trying to finalize the seating chart when a notification popped up from an unknown number. It was a photo of a legal-looking document. He had actually gone to a cut-rate lawyer and attempted to file a petition for partition on my apartment. Now, here's where his lack of research really shines. I bought this place 2 years before I even met him. His name was never on the deed, never on the mortgage, and he hadn't paid a dime toward the principal in 4 years. He barely covered groceries. I called my lawyer, a woman who specializes in high-asset breakups and doesn't have a single ounce of patience for nonsense. He's trying to claim equitable interest because he painted the spare bedroom 3 years ago, I told her, pacing my living room. Let him try, she said, and I could practically hear her smirking through the phone. In this state, sweat equity on a premarital asset without a signed agreement is a joke. But if he wants to play lawyer, we'll play. I'm filing the countersuit for the $15,000 in lost deposits today. Since he's claiming he was still in the relationship while he was in Europe, then those debts are half his. And since he's the one who initiated the breach of contract with the vendors, he's liable for the total loss. The next morning, my ex's mother called me. She used to be like a second parent to me, but the moment her precious boy came home crying, she turned into a shark. How could you do this? She hissed. He's went through a spiritual awakening. He was confused. You're really going to sue him for money he doesn't have? You're marrying a millionaire. Why do you need my son's last cent? It's not about the money, though the money is mine, I replied. It's about the fact that he left me to drown while he was vibrating his way through Greece. He needs to grow up. You're being cruel, she said. He's coming to the vineyard on Friday. He bought a suit. He's going to talk sense into that man you're with. We are family, and you are throwing that away for a fancy estate. That was the confirmation I needed. He wasn't just posturing. He actually intended to crash the rehearsal dinner. My fiancé, who has been a rock through this, just sighed when I told him. He thinks this is a movie, my fiancé said, looking over the guest list. He thinks if he makes a big enough scene, I'll just give you back like you're a piece of property. He doesn't realize that the more he pushes, the easier it is for me to justify the permanent restraining order we're going to file if he steps on the grass. The dirty tricks didn't stop at fake lawsuits. That afternoon, my fiancé's office received an anonymous tip claiming that I had stolen funds from my previous employer to pay for the new wedding. It was a blatant lie, easily debunked by a 5-minute audit, but it was designed to cause friction. My ex even tried to contact the local florist we hired, telling them the event was canceled. Luckily, since my fiancé's family owns the venue and has worked with these vendors for 20 years, the florist called us immediately. Your ex-fiancé just called, the florist told me, sounding embarrassed. He said you'd passed away and the wedding was now a memorial service. He sounded very convincing, he was even crying. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. This wasn't just a guy who couldn't let go. This was a man willing to declare me dead to get his way. I realized then that the gentle soul I thought I loved was a mask for someone who believed the world owed him whatever he desired, regardless of the wreckage he left behind. I sent one final text to my ex. Every time you call a vendor, every time you lie to my family, it's being logged. You have 48 hours to withdraw that ridiculous partition claim, or I'm authorizing my lawyer to go after your mother's co-signed accounts for the debt you owe me. Choose wisely. His response. You don't mean that. You're just hurt. I'll see you Friday. Wear the blue dress I like. He's truly living in a different reality. But the reality he's about to hit involves a legal process that doesn't care about his frequency. If you think this is messy now, wait until you see what happens when he tries to reclaim me in front of a licensed security team. Stick around because the next part is where the bill finally comes due. Friday arrived like a slow-motion car crash. My fiancé and I were at the vineyard, overseeing the setup for the rehearsal dinner. The air smelled like jasmine and expensive wine, but I couldn't stop checking the perimeter. My fiancé noticed my hands shaking and pulled me aside. "He's not getting past the gate," he promised. "I've got 3 guys in plain clothes circling the property. Relax." But entitlement is a hell of a drug. My ex didn't try to sneak in through the main entrance. No, he decided to use the insider knowledge he had from when we toured the venue a year ago. He remembered a service path behind the fermenting sheds. Around 6 p.m., just as our families were sitting down for the first course, he emerged from the shadows of the warehouse. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing the linen suit he'd bought in Italy, looking like some bargain bin version of a romantic lead. He walked right up to the long table, ignoring the gasps from my mother and the visible anger on my father's face. "Stop," he said, holding up a hand like he was commanding the sea. "This has gone far enough." He didn't look at me. He looked straight at my fiancé. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to save him from a mistake. We had a life. We had a plan. He's only doing this because I broke his heart, and you're taking advantage of a wounded man." The table went silent. My fiancé didn't stand up. He didn't even put down his wine glass. He just looked at my ex with a look of pure clinical pity. "You're trespassing," my fiancé said quietly, "and you're embarrassing yourself." "I'm reclaiming my life," my ex shouted, his voice cracking. He turned to me, his eyes wide and frantic. "I talked to the lawyer. I'm dropping the claim on the apartment. I'm giving you a clean slate. We can walk out of here right now. I have a car waiting. We'll go to the coast, just us, and start over. Forget the money, forget the lawsuits. I forgive you for this." He forgave me. The man who abandoned me with $15,000 in debt and vanished for half a year was forgiving me for moving on. I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the stone patio. "You didn't talk to your lawyer," I said, my voice echoing. "Because if you had, you'd know that an hour ago, a process server handed your mother a summons for a freezing order on the joint account she uses to fund your life. You want to talk about a clean slate? You haven't paid for a single thing in your life, including the damage you did to mine." His face went pale, the tan from the Mediterranean fading into a sickly gray. You actually did it? You're suing my mom." "No," I corrected him. "I'm suing you. If your mother's money is the only thing you have, then that's where the court will look. You wanted to play high stakes with fake lawsuits and lies to my vendors. This is the real version." He stepped toward me, reaching out as if to grab my arm, but 2 of the caterers, who were actually the off-duty cops, were on him in a second. They didn't tackle him. They just stepped into his personal space with a finality that made him jump back. "Get your hands off me," he yelled, his entitlement finally morphing into pure rage. "Do you know who I am? I was supposed to be the one owning this place. This should have been my wedding." And there it was. The truth. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about finding himself. He was bitter that the man I replaced him with had more status, more stability, and the very venue he had walked away from. He felt cheated out of a lifestyle he thought he could just come back to whenever he was bored. "Take him to the front gate," my fiancé ordered, "and call the precinct. I want a formal report for the restraining order file." As they led him away, he was screaming back at the table, calling me a gold digger, and shouting at my father to stop this madness. My father, who had been silent the whole time, simply took a sip of his water and said, "The only madness was letting that boy near our family for 4 years. But the night wasn't over." As he was being put into the back of a patrol car at the edge of the property, he did something truly desperate. He pulled out his phone and went live on social media, tagging the vineyard and me, claiming he was being assaulted and kidnapped by a wealthy family. He thought the internet would be his army. He forgot that the internet keeps receipts, and I had a folder full of them ready to go. The drama is peaking, and the actual wedding is tomorrow. He thinks he's won the publicity war, but he's about to find out that the truth doesn't need a filter, and the law doesn't care about his follower count. Stay tuned for the finale. It's going to be a legal and emotional masterpiece. The morning of the wedding was surprisingly quiet. My ex had spent the night in a holding cell after his social media stunt backfired. Apparently, filming yourself screaming at police officers while trespassing on private property isn't the PR win he thought it would be. By the time he was bailed out by his mother at 4 a.m., my lawyer had already sent a cease and desist to his social media platforms, backed by a mountain of evidence showing his harassment. The ceremony was at 2 p.m. The vineyard was stunning, rolling hills, the scent of crushed grapes and expensive lilies. As I stood at the altar next to a man who had shown me more respect in 6 months than my ex had in 4 years, I felt a sense of peace. That was until I saw a black sedan pull up to the vineyard's main gate. The off-duty officers were ready. My ex stepped out of the car, looking disheveled, still wearing that wrinkled linen suit. He had his mother in tow, who was frantically waving a piece of paper. They didn't even try to hide. They marched right up to the security checkpoint at the edge of the ceremony lawn. "This is a legal stay," his mother screamed, holding up what looked like a printed email. "You cannot keep us out. This wedding is under litigation." I didn't stop the ceremony. My fiancé squeezed my hand, a silent signal to stay focused. We kept reading our vows as the shouting grew louder in the distance. My ex was trying to push past the officers, yelling my name, claiming he had new evidence that my fiancé had bribed the vendors to cancel our original wedding. It was a desperate, pathetic lie. The last gasp of a man who realized he had lost his grip on his favorite toy. The legal stay his mother was brandishing? It was a fake. My lawyer, who was actually a guest at the wedding, stood up from her seat, walked over to the gate, and looked at the paper for exactly 2 seconds. "This is a notice of intent to file a motion," she said loudly enough for the front row to hear. "It's not an injunction. You're currently violating a direct trespass warning, issued by the sheriff's department last night. Officers, do your job." The click of handcuffs was the most satisfying sound I've ever heard. It happened right as we were pronounced married. As we turned to walk back down the aisle as husband and husband, I saw my ex being shoved into the back of a cruiser for the second time in 24 hours. His mother was sitting on the gravel, wailing about how I had destroyed her son's spirit. But the real revenge came a month later in court. My ex tried to fight the $15,000 lawsuit, but we brought the receipts, literally. We showed the credit card statements where I had paid the cancellation fees while he was posting photos from a yacht in Mykonos. We showed the logs of his finding himself trip where he spent thousands of dollars he claimed he didn't have. The judge didn't just rule in my favor. She awarded me the full amount plus legal fees and consequential damages for the bad faith litigation he attempted with the apartment. Because he couldn't pay, the court placed a lien on his only asset, the car his mother had bought him, and garnished the small inheritance he was supposed to receive from his grandfather. He didn't just lose me, he lost his safety net. He's currently working a retail job. He hates to pay back a man he tried to ruin. He still tries to message me from burner accounts, talking about cycles and fate, but I don't even read them anymore. I'm too busy living the life he thought he was entitled to, with a man who actually knows what it means to show up. He wanted to find himself and he did. He found out he's a footnote in my success story. If you enjoyed seeing a spiritual awakening turn into a legal awakening, hit that subscribe button. I've got plenty more stories about why you should never let an ex hold the remote to your life. The aftermath of the courtroom victory felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in years. While my ex was busy figuring out how to commute to his new shift work job without a car, my husband and I were settling into a life that felt grounded in reality, not vibrations. But the final blow, the one that really sealed the casket on my ex's entitlement, didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened at a charity gala 3 months later. My husband's family is heavily involved in local philanthropy, and we were hosting an event at the vineyard. I was standing near the entrance greeting guests when I saw a familiar face trying to talk his way past the ticket booth. It was my ex's mother. She looked 10 years older, her designer handbag replaced by something frayed and cheap. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy pleading with the girl at the desk to let her in so she could speak to the family. I walked over, not out of malice but for closure. When she saw me, her face contorted. "You," she whispered. "You've taken everything. He's a shell of himself. He's living in a studio apartment above a garage. He's depressed. Are you happy now?" "I'm not happy that he's miserable," I said, and I actually meant it. "But I am satisfied that he's finally living the life he can actually afford. He spent 4 years living a lie on my dime, and 6 months trying to burn my house down because I stopped paying for the matches. That's not on me. That's on him. She tried to hand me a letter, a thick, rambling manifesto written by my ex. I didn't take it. I knew what was in it. More talk of soul contracts. More excuses, more blame. Keep it, I told her. He needs those pages to remind himself why he's where he is. The real kicker? About a week after that encounter, I received a notification from my lawyer. My ex had tried to file for bankruptcy to discharge the debt he owed me. However, because a portion of the judgment was tied to willful and malicious injury, through his fraudulent litigation and harassment, the court ruled that specific part of the debt was non-dischargeable under 11 U.S.C. Section 523(6). He is legally tethered to the consequences of his actions for the next decade. He wanted to be forever linked to me. Well, now he is via a monthly automated clearinghouse transfer from his paycheck to my savings account. I used the first few payments to fund a scholarship for local students who have faced financial abuse. Every time I see the deposit notification on my phone, I don't feel anger anymore. I don't feel the sting of the sabbatical or the humiliation of the wedding he called off. I just feel the quiet, steady hum of justice. He went to Europe to find himself, but he ended up finding me instead. The version of me that doesn't settle, doesn't break, and certainly doesn't wait around for a man who treats love like a temporary lease. My life didn't end when he walked out. It actually began the moment I stopped trying to save him and started saving myself. If you want to stay updated on how to turn a finding himself crisis into a finding your worth victory, make sure to subscribe, because life is too short to let a villain cast themselves as the hero of your story.